Shalom, everyone. A little morning Torah, Rabbi Eric Salman in Raleigh, North Carolina. You can see a little snowy. We're expecting more snow soon. We'll see. It's North Carolina. Who knows if will come. I want to offer these words for Parshat Yitro. This is the Torah portion that focuses primarily on giving of the Torah, the Ten Commandments, the Seder Dibrot. But I really want to offer them in honor of Rabbi Citron Walker in Beth Israel in Texas. Exceptional week, a traumatic week. We're still reeling from it. And I want to offer this Torah really in their honor and really in his honor as well. A tremendous rabbi and teacher. Tov. But what we do is, when anti-Semites step up to attack us in our institutions, in our synagogues, we study more Torah. We learn more Torah. We keep it going. This is our commitment to keep going. So here's my teaching this Shabbat. What my own kids have all asked me at a certain developmental stage, some still do, even at teenagers, but definitely a certain stage, and what in religious school, and it's a classic question for all of us, including within myself, is, the Torah is given in according to Mount Sinai, and it's a complicated story, but Moshe goes up, and the people are down below, and there's a back and forth, there's a circling of the mountain's like fire, it's got smoke coming from it. So it describes, in detail what happened on Har Sinai. But the question is really, is the Torah, or is that story true? Did God really give the Torah with God's hands to Moshe? And then when Moshe eventually destroys the tablets, then God does it with God's finger, or with Moshe's fingers. Well, what does it mean? Did it really happen that way? And the deeper question that people are asking, or my kids are asking, is really, should I believe in the Torah if it's not really a, 100% God-written, God 100% wrote it, or we don't know if that's the case, or we can't ever prove if that's the case? So what if that's the foundation of Judaism? Should we even believe in Judaism if the Torah has this, or we don't know if the Torah is true? Is the Torah true? And the word for truth in Hebrew is emet. Is it a source of emet? Is it true? And here's my take on that, right? I don't believe the Torah is true in the sense that it was written by God's finger and that God directed every single word. My position is there's historical context, there were human beings involved in it, etc. God inspired, yes, but directly as if that's kind of some kind of solid scientific truth, no. But it's true, there's emet in a different way. And the way I want to describe it is how I discovered it when I was a kid, probably I was in high school. And I, as a kid, like I think many children, or certainly some stereotypical American boys, I'm active, sports. It's hard for me even to sit still to read books. I was not a big reader when I was a kid, beyond like the sports pages and maybe the back of the cereal box. But when I was in high school, my teacher assigned us, I think probably in ninth grade, to read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And I'll never forget it because the book is relatively thin. And I was happy about that. And my mother, who used to really get on me for not reading enough, and said, you'll never do well on your SAT if you don't read more, and you'll never be educated. So I said, okay, I'm going to read this book. And I read the book cover to cover in one, probably multi-hour sitting, which was impossible for me. I still have a lot of shpilkes, for those who know me. Why? For those who know the book, and I want to give it all away, because I hope you'll read it, but it's just a tremendous piece of literature where essentially it's about two brothers who go west, and one of the brothers has a developmental disability. We might say today maybe on the spectrum or autistic, something going on there. And he's a big guy. I think his name was Lenny. And in the course of the story, he's very simple. He doesn't have strong intellectual abilities, but he's very brawny. And at the end of the story, he commits murder by accident. I guess maybe manslaughter. And in order to preserve his life, because he's going to be killed, his brother actually kills him. That's the end of the story. His brother murders him in order to save him from being killed by a mob. And I remember when I read this story, and I was just, every single page, every paragraph, I was on an edge. I couldn't wait to hear what's going to happen next. The writing was so clear. It was simple, clear, but moving and climactic. And as that last piece happened, when the brother killed his younger brother, again, in order to protect him, essentially as a sign of love, he did it. I cried. I got teary. And I remember reading that and I couldn't believe that I was crying over a book. A movie, a personal story. I mean, I didn't, all the kind of complex masculine identity of American males. I didn't want to cry in general as a kid, or I didn't know how I felt about that as a teenager. But just reading about it, and I identified with this older brother, with the dynamic, with the sensitivity, with the beauty of it, the power and the pain. I cried. And it's in that moment I realized, and I've held with it to this day, that even though the book I knew was a book of fiction, John Steinbeck never said it was true, that it really happened. But that story was more true than anything I could ever imagine or ever read or ever scientifically study. It had truth in it. So what does that mean? Just because something didn't happen doesn't mean it's not true. The Torah teaches that our people were enslaved in Egypt, 10 plagues, splitting the sea, eventually towards the promised land. And there are people, scientists, archaeologists, biblical scholars, quote unquote, who try to prove every Pesach that it happened, that it's true. There's been I think in general there's no evidence, but there's small evidence. Maybe there was a Hebrew people enslaved for some period of time in ancient Egypt, for, very little evidence of actually any of the whole Pesach story happened at all. In fact, it's likely it didn't happen, certainly as described in the Torah. It doesn't mean it's not true that we are all enslaved. There is a Pharaoh, and we are striving towards freedom. This is the story of time immemorial. Whether it's actual slavery, like in the case of our own country or the world, or a spiritual slavery, or psychological slavery, or even an internal slavery, and that we are seeking freedom, seeking liberation. That is true. So the Torah, I believe, is truer than ever, but not if you define truth according to scientific truth. That's not what the meaning of the Torah is about. It's not about, how the world was created. 6 days, 7 days with rest. It's about why. Why was it created? What's the purpose? And that's true too. A piece of art, which the Torah is, a beautiful, holy, sacred piece of art, should not be evaluated by a scientific basis, but by a meaning basis, by how it makes us look at the world basis, a values basis. And that, I stake my life on it. So did the Torah happen as described, in Har Sinai? And I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. But that God revealed wisdom to the world, that this wisdom is supposed to give us values, that this wisdom is an opportunity where Moshe opened his heart to be to a power beyond himself. Yeah, I believe that is true. And that is something to teach us here. And here's my last comment here, just in light of Texas. It's too early to make comments to describe meaning. We're still traumatized. It's exceptional. I'm still absorbing it. Obviously, there are things to learn about anti-Semitism, about the need to be safe and protect oneself, about Rabbi Citron Walker's tremendous teaching, but our behavior. I want to say, though, he modeled something beautiful and remarkable about the balance between hospitality, which is all over the Torah, including Abraham and Sarah, and self-protection, which is also in the Torah. You understood to love one's neighbor, balancing that with, not giving up oneself. Those are values brought up within the Torah. And someone like himself who has wrapped himself in the Torah, and it's a guide for him, it's true for him. He had to struggle with them, but it's part of his neshama. And that's what I pray for the Torah is for us. It was given to us as a gift. It is a source of truth. And our job is not to obsess about scientific aspects of it, but how can we take its truth and make it a part of us as well? So I wish everyone, please, got a safe, peaceful Shabbat. A Shabbat where we hold the Torah close and we honor it for being not just a source of emet, scientifically, whatever, which I don't believe it's true, but as a source of guiding light of the truth of our hearts, truth of our values, and a truth that goes beyond the words. Shabbat Shalom. Kol Tov.